I think it's safe to say New York football embarrassed themselves yesterday at 1 o'clock. Let's get into it. So, the New York Giants season ended yesterday, and the Jets lived to fight another day. And what you saw was what most people anticipated, which was a complete slog fest of a game. Probably one of the worst football games. And honestly, if we're considering my fandom for the New York Giants, it doesn't get much worse from an emotional standpoint of how yesterday ended and how yesterday was played. And I know not all of it is due to the player's fault necessarily or the coach's fault. There was a ton of injuries and a ton of handicaps holding them down. And it's unfortunate, but that's the reality of what happened. Most people knew that yesterday wasn't going to be lighting up the scoreboard for either side, especially considering the weather conditions of the teams going into the game. But it's New York football in MetLife Stadium, New York, New York, stadiums half and half. You know, we don't really see it as a rivalry in some cases, but even the players on the team have admitted that. But when you're in there and both teams are trying to win and lose, not win and lose, and both teams trying to win, like, it doesn't get much crazier than New York versus New York. So the fact that the New York Giants are 2-5 heading into this game, right? And the Jets are 3-3 coming off their best win. They just came off a bye week, but they're coming off their best win versus the Philadelphia Eagles. The New York Jets haven't won a bye in some time now. They didn't win last year. They were coming off their best win of the season, and then they lost to the New England Patriots. This year, they're coming off the Philadelphia Eagles game. They're coming into a game that they have to win versus the New York Giants if they want to compete in the division. And let's face it, if they want to make the playoffs. I mean, if you're trying to make the playoffs, the Giants is a team you got to beat at this point in the season with their record. Now, from the Giants' standpoint, it was a must win because if they win, then they go into next week 3-5, going against the Vegas Raiders, who aren't very good. And then you start getting ideas. All right, maybe 4-5. And then you're going into Dallas 4-5, possibly with Daniel Jones healthy at that point, and then you got newfound energy with the not as much of a juggernaut of a schedule for the rest of the season. But that's not what happened. We were 1 minute away, as a Giants fan, from that happening, but it didn't happen. The mind numbing just depression that came in after Graham Gano missed that field goal was absurd. I knew we lost the game right after that because I knew, despite how awful Zach Wilson was all game, give Zach Wilson some credit here. I know he was terrible, but he's had moments this year where he does just enough to get his team full of talented guys to get over the finish line. He's done just enough. And yesterday, he did just enough against a Giants defense that, let's face it, the last few weeks has looked really good. And yesterday, Kayvon Thibodeau, I mean, talk about, telling you haters to go fly a kite. I mean, Kayvon Thibodeau was awesome. And we all thought he had ended the game for the Giants. That big sack. I mean, he was just incredible the entire game. But despite all that, Zach Wilson makes the biggest plays to bring the Jets and spikes it just in time. Some people have issue with that. I didn't really care. Zach Wilson spikes it just in time, gives the Jets a chance to tie it and go into overtime, and then took advantage in overtime. He did just enough. And yeah, the Giants are a good football team. No, they're not. But you know what? They got guys that are talented. It's not easy to win in the NFL. Clearly, the Jets shouldn't have won if you're looking at it. When I say that, I mean, of course, it was looking Like they had no chance of winning at one point. There was even a point where you saw a guy in an Aaron Rodgers jersey leave the stadium after Kayvon Thibodeau sacked Zach Wilson, and it looked like the Giants were going to win. So who's to blame? There's we always like to blame people. You're seeing a lot of heat on Dable. If it was me, and we're talking specifically about that 4th and 1, I would have went for it. Now, I'm a fan. A lot of fans are wrong. But the reason why I would have went for it, because even if Gano makes it, like, you give your defense some, belief, some easiness to defend on the other end. When Graham Gano missed that field goal, you could tell the defense was like, oh, we actually have to like prevent them from getting a field goal here. And I understand the risk if you don't get 4th and 1 is the same thing. And if you get Gano with the field goal, it's I understand it. I understand the thinking, and I don't think it was an awful call that some people are talking about. I think it was something you had to think about. However, with Saquon Barkley being your best player, being the reason that the Giants have played better in the last few weeks, is solely responsible for a lot of the wins and competitive games that they've had recently. I just would have given, and the fact that he carried the offense in the second half, I couldn't believe he was doing it because the Jets knew what was coming every single time, and yet they still couldn't stop it sometimes. That's how good the guy is. 4th and 1. If you get that first down, the game is over. But that's not what happened. We give it to Graham Gano. And here's another thing, a guy that's not getting enough criticism, Graham Gano. 2 missed field goals in that game. He really hasn't been right all year. I don't know what's happened to Graham Gano, but he's not like good anymore. You can't trust him anymore. Last year, he was lights out. You're like, all right, 3 points, Graham Gano. We know we got it with him. I know the weather wasn't great, but it wasn't that windy. I live in New Jersey, man. Like, it wasn't that windy. It was rainy. I get it. Like, understandably so. Zierlein was making them. It's an inexcusable miss at the end for Graham Gano. And he missed the first one, fine. The second one, you got to make. That's a huge spot right there. You have to make that. So, people are ripping Dable. I just think it was unlucky. Are we ripping Dable if the Giants win yesterday? No. We're not. I mean, and the defense for the Giants was so good all game. And then the last 45 seconds, I think it was, Zach Wilson makes 2 huge passes, and they get it down to spike it. They make the field goal. And as far as offensively goes for Dable, gutless. A lot of people are calling him gutless and stuff. I even called him gutless on certain plays. Very opposite from last year, it looks like. It's clear that Dable doesn't really have faith in the offense to do things because, and can you blame him? Tommy DeVito, I don't want to get on him. He scored his first touchdown yesterday. I mean, he's actually from Jersey, so like that's cool and all. But my God, man, they ran some short throw plays, right? Some short plays in the flat, and he couldn't make those throws. He couldn't. And he almost threw a pick on an easy flat pass to Barkley, I believe it was. So Dable's like, no, we can't risk it with this guy. Now in overtime, they had to do it. There was times, man, like 3rd and long, like give it a shot. Overtime, we got to do something more than just throw it to the flat, gain no yards, and there you go. Like it's got to be more than that, man. Like you had to show some aggressiveness. And the better of this game, if you watched it, and you got to give credit to the Jets, man. You got to give credit to the Jets and the way they hung in there. Because Robert Saleh was outcoached until he wasn't. The Jets were dead until he wasn't. Until they weren't. Zach Wilson was awful until he wasn't. And they got the win, man. A few weeks ago, After that Giants-Bills game, I recorded and I said the Giants are finding ways to lose. And they continue to do that. The season is over for the New York Giants, and they got to start thinking about their future. Last year was awesome. It probably stunted their rebuild, maybe gave some false hope for some people. They got to really rethink things because you got a quarterback who I think is good still. They got a quarterback who gets injured a lot, and he isn't reliable. They got a backup quarterback in Tyrod Taylor who is good, but again, gets injured. I mean, the Giants probably win with Tyrod Taylor yesterday. That's why I had the Giants winning this game before. And I still had the Giants winning this game after he got injured. That's how bad the Jets were playing. Once Gano missed that field goal to end it, I was like, uh-oh. This is bad. And once Zach Wilson completed that first pass, I was like, oh, man, here we go. Here we go. I knew the Giants defense wasn't ready. They didn't think they had to play any more huge possessions. They were caught flat-footed, man. And I feel like I'm not talking about the Jets enough. Garrett Wilson with some big plays. Zach Wilson was really terrible, and he came up huge at the end. The Jets defense was still good. Okay? However, I was still thinking that the Jets defense could have been better. I mean, how do you not know in the second half that they're not going to throw the ball? And they still were caught off guard. They knew what was coming, and they still, it seemed like they didn't, but you knew they were. You knew they're not that stupid. This is one of the best defensive teams in the league. They know they're one of the best red zone defenses, and they still gave up that touchdown to Tommy DeVito. Like, they could have been better, even though if you look at the scoreboard, they didn't give up a lot of points. Well, of course they didn't give up a lot of points because they have the third string quarterback playing for the New York Giants. So this isn't really a win for the Jets fans to really be like, oh yeah, we're good. Like, congratulations, you got the win. I'm sure Jets fans have been like, and listen, I understand this. Like, if you win a game, don't let anybody mess with that. Don't let anybody be like, oh, you didn't deserve to win it. But blah, blah, blah. It's all crap. They're coming off a bye week. They haven't played in 2 weeks. I mean, they got the win. That's all that matters. They won the game. They're finding a way to win at the end of the game, and that's really impressive to deal with adversity like that. So any Giant fan that's going to like crap on the Jets' victory yesterday just because you're salty and how stupidly your team ended the game, it's crap, man. It's crap. Jets fans, you deserve to be happy after yesterday. Because if you look at it, you're 4-3. Now, do I believe the Giants and Jets are different from a roster standpoint on talent? Like, is the Jets' talent overwhelmingly better? I don't think so. But you know what I do know? The Jets are finding ways to win games, and the Giants are not. And you can blame schedule. The Jets had a tough schedule too. The Jets have faced all this adversity with Aaron Rodgers, their sole prize of the offseason, Super Bowl contenders for the first time in forever, for the first time in over a decade. And that goes away after 4 weeks. And you know what? The Jets are still playing well. So that's what I have to say to the Giants fan. And I'm a Giants fan, but even I can admit I'm not bringing another team's fan base down just because my team is stupid in the way they ended the game. And this isn't just coaches. It's not it was bad luck. It sometimes happens, but there's no other way to look around it. They lost the game because they're not a good team and they don't know how to finish games anymore. They did last year. That's poof gone now. And yeah, there's circumstances, there's excuses. I'm not saying every loss, you need to have a sole reason to why you lost the game. Not everyone is to blame. Do I think Brian Daboll's coaching yesterday was terrible? Listen, if Graham Gano makes that field goal and they stop the Jets from scoring a touchdown, which was a likely thing, then we're all looking at Brian Daboll completely outcoached Robert Saleh and it's a miracle that he won with a third string quarterback in the second half. It's unbelievable. But we're not saying that today because the Giants defense was caught flat-footed and they couldn't stop the Jets on that drive. And it's really that simple. The Giants season is over. The Jets live to see another week, and their future, while despite yesterday showing some real concern on how they played against the third string quarterback, you got the win and you can move on and have a productive season with a second half schedule that's severely weakened. Congratulations to the Jets, the Giants fans. Ugh.